Imagine this. Dinner in a glittering penthouse, the city lights mocking the sterile family facade. I slice my steak, avoiding my stepbrother's gaze. It's always been there, heavy, pulling like a current. But tonight, under the table, his foot slides up my leg, bold and unyielding, while our parents drone on about harmony. My glass shatters the silence as I choke, heart slamming. He's not stopping. His eyes promise ruin. We've fought like enemies since kids, but now at 20, this war's twisted into something sick, electric, skin on skin that shouldn't crave. What if one stolen touch unravels everything? The thrill hits like venom. Disgust coils in your gut, but you can't look away. This is the forbidden pull you've been chasing, raw, wrong, and begging for more. Dinner in our sprawling apartment on the 25th floor unfolded in that familiar, almost museum-like silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the evening metropolis, etched with a grid of lights like veins pulsing below, but inside sterile white dominated, walls, linens, even the gleam off the silverware. I sat across from my stepbrother, meticulously slicing my steak into tiny, precise pieces, as if control over the meat could steady the undercurrent humming through me. At the head of the table, my parents presided. Mother, still beautiful in that icy way afforded by endless money, her features sharp as cut crystal, and my stepfather, whose dark skin and broad shoulders always struck me as too imposing for this fragile, minimalist space, like a storm cloud in a porcelain teacup. The conversation meandered sluggishly, touching on university grades and vague summer plans, the kind of small talk that filled voids without bridging them. Mother smiled, adjusting her napkin with a delicate flick, and remarked how wonderful it was that our blended family had finally achieved harmony after all those years of teenage squabbles and slammed doors. Her voice carried that polished optimism, the sort drilled into her by boardrooms and brunches, but it rang hollow to me, a veneer over the fractures we'd all learned to ignore. Julian said nothing. He didn't glance at our parents. His gaze, heavy and unblinking, fixed on me alone, boring in with an intensity that made the air thicken. In childhood, we'd clashed like wild animals, fighting over space and secrets until blood dotted the rugs, our territories marked by bruised egos and whispered threats. But now, at 20 each, the battles had shifted to a subtler battlefield, one woven from stolen glances and unspoken claims. I felt his stare on my skin, tangible as a brush of fingers, raising gooseflesh despite the warmth of the room. It wasn't hatred anymore. It was something darker, coiled tighter, pulling at the edges of propriety we'd both pretended to uphold. I reached for my water glass, willing my hands not to tremble, the cool liquid a fleeting anchor against the tide rising within. Then, beneath the tablecloth's pristine drape, the fragile illusion shattered. Julian's bare foot grazed my ankle, a deliberate slide that sent a jolt up my leg, slow and unyielding as it ascended beneath the hem of my light dress. The touch was crude, possessive, laced with the audacity that had always defined him, untamed, unapologetic. My breath caught, water spilling over my lips as I choked, the glass clattering sharply against the polished oak. Mother's head snapped up, her eyes wide with concern, her fork pausing mid-air. "Lily, darling, are you all right?" she asked, voice laced with that maternal fret she reserved for minor crises, like a smudge on her reputation. I nodded too quickly, forcing a cough to mask the heat flooding my cheeks, my pulse thundering in my ears. Julian merely crooked a smile, lazy and knowing, his foot lingering just a fraction higher, a silent dare that pressed against the boundary we'd never crossed aloud. In his eyes I glimpsed the promise that dried my throat, a volatile brew of fear and that illicit spark, electric and forbidden, humming like a live wire between us. The room seemed to contract, the city's glow beyond the glass mocking our domestic charade, while under the table, his claim lingered, unspoken yet indelible. Mother resumed her monologue, oblivious, extolling the virtues of family therapy sessions that had supposedly mended our frayed bonds. She spoke of growth, of how we'd all evolved beyond the chaos of adolescence, her words a soothing balm she applied liberally to any hint of discord. My stepfather nodded along, his deep chuckle rumbling occasionally, a counterpoint to her lightness, but his attention wandered to his phone, the screen's blue light carving shadows across his face. I envied their detachment, the ease with which they navigated this scripted normalcy, while I sat ensnared in the web Julian wove with a single hidden gesture. The steak on my plate grew cold, its juices congealing as I pushed pieces around. Appetite vanished under the weight of his proximity. Memories flickered unbidden. The summer we'd turned 16, when he'd caught me sunbathing by the pool, his shadow falling over me like an eclipse, his voice low as he teased about secrets no sibling should share. We'd laughed it off then, but the echo lingered, a thread pulling taut now in the dim dining light. His foot withdrew at last, retreating with deliberate slowness, leaving a phantom warmth that prickled against my skin, a brand I couldn't scrub away. I excused myself moments later, murmuring something about a headache, the lie slipping out as smoothly as the water had earlier. Rising from the table felt like surfacing from depths, the chair's scrape echoing too loudly in the hush. Mother's concern followed me. "Rest, dear, you've been pushing too hard at school." But Julian's silence was louder, his eyes tracking my retreat down the hall, a predator's patience etched in every line of his posture. The apartment's corridors stretched long and echoing, marble floors cool under my heels, each step a bit for distance from the table's charged underbelly. In my room I leaned against the door, breath ragged, the city's hum filtering through the glass like a distant roar. The dress clung damply to my thighs, a reminder of the boundary blurred, and I stripped it off with shaking fingers, letting it pool at my feet like shed skin. The mirror reflected a stranger, flushed, wide-eyed, caught in the thrall of what shouldn't be. 20 years of shared roofs and stolen moments had led here, to this precipice where harmony cracked open to reveal the chaos beneath. I sank onto the bed, sheets crisp and unforgiving, staring at the ceiling's recessed lights, willing sleep to erase the evening's imprint. But his gaze haunted the shadows, that crooked promise coiling in my chest, a spark waiting for the dry tinder of night. Down the hall, I heard the murmur of voices resuming, the clink of dishes being cleared, the facade rebuilding brick by brittle brick. Father, my stepfather, always a title too formal, joked about dessert, his baritone easing the air back to complacency. Mother laughed, light and tinkling, the sound a lifeline to the world outside our tangled knot. Julian's response was muted, a word or two that carried no warmth, his mind elsewhere, scheming in the spaces between syllables. I wondered if they sensed it, the shift in the room's gravity, or if their blindness was a choice, a luxury of the unentwined. Sleep evaded me, the clock's digital face ticking past 11, then midnight, each minute a stretch of taut wire. The metropolis outside thrummed on, oblivious to the domestic tremor, its lights winking like conspirators. I traced patterns on the duvet, fingers restless, replaying the graze of skin on skin, the audacity that both repelled and drew me inexorably closer. We'd built walls in youth, fortresses of resentment, but time had eroded them, leaving ramparts laced with something perilously like desire. At 20, we were no longer children play-acting at enmity. We were adults, armed with the knowledge of consequences, yet teetering on the edge all the same. By 1 in the morning, the apartment fell fully silent, the parents' door clicking shut with finality. Footsteps padded down the hall. His I knew without seeing, the rhythm deliberate, unhurried. They paused outside my door, a shadow shifting under the frame, breath held in the darkness. My heart slammed against ribs, a caged bird battering for release, as the knob didn't turn, the threshold unbreached. He lingered, a presence felt more than seen, then retreated, the floorboards sighing under his weight. Relief warred with disappointment, a bitter cocktail that soured on my tongue, leaving me adrift in the quiet aftermath. Dawn crept in gray and reluctant, painting the skyline in muted hues, as if the night had exhausted even the city. I rose unrest, the mirror showing hollows under my eyes, a map of unspoken battles. Breakfast awaited downstairs, another ritual in our whitewashed world, but the memory of dinner clung like smoke, infusing every corner with tension. Julian would be there, casual as ever, his secrets tucked behind that crooked smile, while I navigated the minefield of glances and grazes. Our blended family, harmonious on the surface, harbored depths where currents pulled toward the forbidden, and I, caught in the undertow, wondered how long before the wave broke us all. The apartment sank into a bluish half-light at night, the kind that seeped through the blackout curtains like smoke from a distant fire, muting the edges of everything familiar. I lay in my room, sheets twisted around my legs, ears straining for sounds beyond the wall, the faint creak of settling beams, the whisper of air through vents. I knew our parents slept soundly in the opposite wing of the penthouse, their door a barrier of polished oak and unspoken routines, lulling them into oblivion hours ago. The clock on my nightstand glowed 2 in the morning, its digits a cold accusation, marking time I couldn't reclaim. Sleep had fled after dinner's rupture, leaving me adrift in the residue of Julian's gaze, that lingering shadow under my door, a prelude I both dreaded and craved. My door eased open without a sound, a sliver of hallway dimness spilling in like an uninvited confession. I hadn't locked it. I never had, not in these past months, as if some reckless part of me left the latch unlatched on purpose, a silent invitation etched in the habit. The air stirred, carrying the faint scent of his cologne, woodsy, sharp like pine needles crushed underfoot, and then he was there, crossing the threshold with that predatory grace that had always grated on me, a sleek intrusion into my carefully curated solitude. It mesmerized too, in its unapologetic flow, muscles shifting under his skin like a panther's prowl, every step measured to claim space without announcement. In the beginning it had been a game of power, those stolen glances across crowded rooms or empty hallways, a contest of who could hold the stare longer, who would blink first and retreat into the safety of feigned indifference. We'd push until one yielded, the loser marked by a flush or a hasty exit, the victory tasting bitter as ash. But games erode boundaries, and what started as skirmishes morphed into something insidier, a dependency that coiled in my veins like smoke from a slow-burning fuse. Now his presence in my room wasn't a challenge. It was inevitability, the pull of gravity we'd both stopped fighting, even as it dragged us toward the abyss. He approached the bed without a word, the mattress dipping under his weight as he loomed at the edge, a silhouette carved from the gloom. His hand reached out, fingers hooking the edge of the duvet, yanking it down in one fluid motion that exposed me to the chill air, my thin nightshirt no shield against the sudden vulnerability. In the half-light his skin blended with the shadows, dark and seamless, absorbing the faint glow from the city beyond the windows like a void that hungered for more. I caught the glint of his eyes, fixed on me with that unyielding intensity, stripping away pretense as easily as the covers. I opened my mouth, words forming on my tongue, something sharp laced with sarcasm, a reminder of lines we shouldn't cross, the fragile threads of family that bound us in name if not in blood. But he moved faster, his palm pressing over my lips, firm yet measured, silencing the protest before it could sharpen into sound. The pressure was absolute, not cruel but commanding, his skin warm against mine, calluses from gym weights roughening the contact. My breath hitched against his fingers, hot and erratic, the world narrowing to that point of restraint, the hum of the air conditioner the only intruder in our shared silence. In that hush, broken only by the mechanical drone masking our breaths, our nearness became a battlefield, not the soft surrender of lovers but a clash of tempests long leashed. It wasn't tenderness that drove him, nor me the yielding participant. It was collision, raw and elemental, two forces that had chafed against each other for years now unleashing in controlled bursts. Every brush of limb against limb teetered on the brink of ache, a deliberate edge that sharpened the illicit thrill, while the press of mouths carried the tang of iron, like biting back a scream. We were step-siblings, blood strangers forged in the crucible of one roof, and that separation made the tangle filthy, unbearably keen, a secret sharpened by the very taboo it defied. As his arms encircled me, drawing me into the cage of his frame, I felt the foundations crumble. The moral edicts mother had hammered into me since girlhood, lectures on decorum and legacy delivered over brunches in sunlit cafes. They splintered under the weight of his hold, giving way to a shadow that bloomed dark and consuming, a bond forged in the underbelly of our polished life, tighter than any lineage of shared holidays or posed photos. In his grip, I wasn't Lily the dutiful daughter anymore. I was something feral, unmoored, the girl who'd once scratched his arms bloody over a stolen diary now yielding to the man who'd claimed it back with whispers in the dark. The room's contours blurred, walls receding into the indigo haze as our forms intertwined, a dance of restraint and release that echoed the pent-up storms of adolescence. Memories surfaced unbidden. The winter we'd turned 14, barricaded in our rooms during a blizzard, passing notes under doors that started as taunts and veered into confessions too raw for daylight. He'd written of feeling like an outsider in this gleaming cage our parents had built, and I'd replied with sketches of escape routes, bridges we'd never cross. Those words, once innocent fuel for our alliance against adult hypocrisies, now twisted into this, a dependency that mocked our younger selves. His breath ghosted my neck, a ragged cadence that matched the thunder in my chest, each exhale a concession to the chaos we'd invited. I arched against him, not in submission but defiance, nails digging crescents into his shoulders, marking territory in a war without victors. The bed creaked softly under our shifts, a traitor to the silence, but the penthouse's vastness swallowed it. The other wing a world away where dreams of mergers and galas played out in slumber. Here in this pocket of night we were untethered, the city's distant pulse our only witness, its neon veins indifferent to the fracture we widened. Doubt flickered then, a cold splinter amid the heat, a whisper of what this meant for the dawn, when faces would reassemble into masks of civility over coffee and croissants. Mother's eyes sharp as she scanned for cracks in our facade. Stepfather's easy obliviousness, a shield I envied. But Julian's weight pinned the uncertainty, his murmur against my ear a low rumble of possession, words fragmented and fierce, binding me tighter to the precipice. It wasn't love, not in the sanitized stories she'd read me. It was addiction, a vein tap that bled us both dry, yet we drank deeper, parched for the burn. Time fractured in the dimness, minutes stretching like taffy, the clock's glow mocking our suspension. His hands mapped familiar paths, tracing lines we'd learned by rote in stolen afternoons, each press a reminder of boundaries blurred long ago. I tasted salt on his skin, the residue of sweat and secrecy, and in that flavor the grime of our shared history, the fights over bathroom mirrors, the alliances against parental edicts, all alchemized into this potent elixir. We weren't blood, but the roof had mingled us, imprinting scents and sounds until separation felt like amputation. As the intensity crested, a wave held at bay then crashing in whispers, I clung to him, the precipice giving way to freefall, a plummet into the void we'd carved. It wasn't ecstasy's pure light but something shadowed, laced with the thrill of ruin, the knowledge that morning would demand we rebuild from shards. His release came with a shudder that rippled through us both, a quake subsiding into aftershocks, leaving me hollowed, filled only by the echo of his form. In the aftermath we lay entangled, breath sinking in the conditioned air, the blue pallor painting us as ghosts of our daytime selves. Regret crept in with the cooling sheets, a sly intruder coiling at the edges of satisfaction, whispering of consequences we'd ignored like overdue bills. I shifted, creating sliver of space, his arm a lax barrier now, heavy with spent urgency. Staring at the ceiling's faint constellations from recessed lights, I traced the fissures in our story, the merger of families 5 years ago, a glossy union of fortunes that left us collateral, two teens thrust into roles ill-fitting as hand-me-downs. We'd rebelled in tandem, a united front against the blended ideal, but solidarity soured into this, a secret that both fortified and frayed us. He stirred, propping on an elbow, his profile etched against the window's glow, eyes scanning my face with that dissecting gaze, probing for fractures. You didn't lock the door, he said, voice gravel rough, not accusation but observation, a hook baited with our mutual complicity. I met his stare, defiance sparking anew, the embers of our clash not fully doused. And you always come anyway, I countered, the words a spark that could reignite or repel, testing the air between us. His laugh was low, devoid of mirth, a sound that vibrated through the mattress, acknowledging the truth we danced around. The conversation veered then, not to recriminations but detours, fragments of the day sifted through our filter, the dinner's feigned harmony, mother's platitudes like varnish overwrought. He spoke of stepfather's latest venture, a tech merger that promised empires but delivered only more absences, his tone laced with the resentment that mirrored mine, two outsiders bonded by the periphery. I listened, fingers idly tracing the scars on his knuckles from boyhood brawls, relics of when our fights were physical, not this veiled warfare of wants. In these post-storm lulls, vulnerability surfaced, a rare tide exposing the boy beneath the predator, the one who'd once defended me from schoolyard whispers. Yet even in confession the undercurrent pulled, his hand finding mine, intertwining fingers in a gesture too intimate for siblings, too possessive for strangers. The city's hum filtered in, a bass note underscoring our whispers, reminding me of the world beyond these walls. A metropolis that chewed ambitions and spat out husks, indifferent to our private unraveling. I wondered, in that suspended quiet, if this was the price of our roof's legacy. Isolation masked as unity, forcing us into orbits too close for sanity. His thumb stroked my wrist, a pulse point he knew by heart, and doubt dissolved into the pull, the dependency reasserting like breath after submersion. Dawn's first blush tainted the blue, a gradual bleed of gray across the skyline, heralding the ritual's return. He rose without haste, muscles coiling as he gathered discarded clothes, the ritual of departure as choreographed as our entrances. I watched from the bed, sheets clutched like armor, the chill reclaiming the space he'd warmed. His silhouette paused at the door, turning back with that crooked half-smile, a promise or a threat, the line blurred in the half-light. "Lock it next time," he murmured, the words a jest that landed heavy, challenging me to end what we'd begun. The door clicked shut, leaving echo and emptiness, the penthouse stirring to life in distant clatters. I lingered in the rumpled nest, body aching with phantom imprints, mind a whirl of recriminations and replays. The mirror across the room reflected disarray. Hair tangled, lips swollen subtly, eyes holding the night's secrets like bruises under silk. Splashing water on my face in the ensuite did little to wash away the taint, the cool stream a pale echo of his touch, rinsing surface but not depths. Breakfast loomed, the kitchen's marble expanse where we'd convene. Masks donned afresh, his casual lean against counters belying the hours stolen. Venturing out, the hallway stretched interminable, each step a negotiation with gravity, the floor's chill seeping through socks. Voices drifted from the kitchen, mother's lilting cadence over coffee, stepfather's rumble of agreement, the symphony of normalcy I'd once taken for granted. Julian was there already, perched on a stool, scrolling his phone with feigned absorption, the picture of indolent youth. Our eyes met across the island, a flicker of shared knowledge passing like contraband, quickly veiled as I poured cereal, the mundane act a flimsy shield. Mother turned, radiant in her robe, oblivious beacon, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Slept well, darling? You look a touch peaked." Her concern was genuine, threaded with the worry of one who measured worth in appearances, and I murmured assurances, spoon clinking against porcelain, the lie as routine as the meal. Julian's foot brushed mine under the counter, a fleeting echo of dinner's audacity, gone before I could recoil, leaving only the ghost of intent. The air thickened imperceptibly, our secret a current beneath the surface chatter, pulling at the seams of the morning. Conversation flowed around university prospects, internships dangled like carrots, the future a canvas mother painted in strokes of ambition. Stepfather chimed in with anecdotes from boardrooms, his laughter booming, a counterweight to her precision, but I heard the undernote, their union a merger of equals unlike ours stitched from necessity. Julian contributed sparingly, his drawl laced with irony, eyes occasionally drifting to me, hooks baited anew. I chewed mechanically, flavors muted, the dependency a low hum in my blood, sating yet starving, promising more in the next blue-lit vigil. By mid-morning, the penthouse buzzed with individual pursuits, mother to her yoga mat, stepfather to calls in his study, Julian vanishing to the gym with a nod that lingered too long. I retreated to my desk, laptop open to half-hearted essays, but focus fractured, words blurring into replays of shadowed forms. The window framed the sprawl below, a labyrinth of steel and glass where secrets multiplied in anonymity, mirroring our own. At 20 we should have been charting freedoms, not ensnaring each other in this web, but the roof's weight pressed, forging chains from proximity. Afternoon waned in solitude, sunlight slanting golden across pages, but the night's residue clung, a film over thoughts. I paced the room, fingers trailing bookshelves lined with tomes of propriety. Jane Austen's spines mocking our farce, Freud's gaze judgmental from the shelf. What would they say of this, the analysts of decorum and psyche, two heirs to fortune tangled in taboo's embrace? The phone buzzed, a text from a friend, oblivious query about weekend plans, and I typed platitudes, the screen a portal to normalcy I envied, yet couldn't breach. Evening crept in, the city igniting its grid once more, a prelude to the cycle's renew. Dinner approached, another tableau in our theater, but anticipation coiled tighter now, sharpened by the night's indulgence. Julian passed my door en route to showers, pausing to knock lightly, His "see you down there" innocuous to ears beyond, but laced for mine with undercurrents. I nodded through the wood, heart a staccato, the dependency of vine that strangled breath yet bloomed defiant. As plates were set, the familiar hush descended, mother's smile a beacon, stepfather's chair scraping welcome. Julian sat opposite, composure a second skin, but his eyes held the night's cipher, a language only we spoke. The fork's tine-pierced asparagus, juices bright, but taste evaded, replaced by the pulse of what simmered beneath. Our blended family, harmonious in speech, harbored tempests in silence, and I, adrift in the eye, wondered if the storm would consume or redefine us, the blue half-light waiting to claim its due once more. The parents departed early Friday morning for their charity weekend, a whirlwind of designer luggage and air-kissed farewells in the foyer, their voices echoing with the practiced enthusiasm of socialites bound for galas and golf courses. Mother pressed a cool cheek to mine, her perfume a cloud of orchids in obligation, murmuring reminders about the alarm system and takeout menus, as if we were still the fractious teens she'd once shuttled to tutors. Stepfather clapped Julian on the shoulder, his broad hand a fleeting anchor, joking about not burning the place down with one of his experimental playlists. The elevator doors slid shut on their laughter, leaving the penthouse vast and echoing, a hollow shell suddenly too immense for just two. I watched the numbers descend on the panel, a countdown to solitude, my reflection in the polished brass distorted, elongated like the unease twisting in my gut. Freedom tasted sharp, untested, the air already thickening with possibilities we'd only whispered about in shadows. By mid-morning, the sprawl of rooms felt constricted, corridors narrowing under the weight of absence, as if the penthouse itself conspired to funnel us closer. Sunlight poured through the atrium skylight, gilding the white marble floors in gold, but the silence amplified every creak, every breath, turning the space into an intimate cage. I wandered the kitchen island, brewing coffee in the gleaming machine, its hiss a solitary companion, steam curling like questions unanswered. The fridge hummed its low aria, stocked with artisanal yogurts and heirloom tomatoes, provisions for a family that now numbered two, the excess mocking our pared-down reality. Julian emerged from his wing, shirtless and tousled, sweatpants slung low on his hips, the casual disarray a deliberate provocation in the daylight's unforgiving glare. His presence filled the room, displacing air, and I braced against the counter, mug warming my palms, feigning absorption in the foam's latte art. He moved behind me without preamble, a shadow merging seamlessly, his chest brushing my back as he reached for a cabinet overhead. The contact was electric, unhurried, his arm caging me against the cold marble slab, the chill seeping through my thin tank top like a reprimand. Coffee forgotten, its bitter steam dissipating and used, I gripped the edge, knuckles whitening as his hips pressed forward, a slow assertion that pinned me in place. His breath fanned my ear, warm and ragged, carrying the faint salt of sleep, and in that moment the kitchen transformed, not a bastion of domesticity but a frontier, boundaries redrawn in the heat of unchecked proximity. Laughter bubbled low in his throat, a vibration I felt through fabric, and I twisted just enough to meet his gaze. Dark eyes gleaming with the recklessness we'd unleashed, fear of discovery evaporated like morning mist under the sun's insistence. Breakfast unfolded in fragments, toast charred at the edges from my distracted vigil over the toaster, eggs scrambled hastily on the induction cooktop, their golden fluff a poor mask for the tremor in my hands. We ate at the island, stools drawn close, knees brushing under the overhang, each incidental touch a spark in the tinder dry air. Conversation skirted the edges, university deadlines, a film we'd both pretended to watch separately, but words served as filler, scaffolding for the undercurrent pulling us taut. His fork scraped porcelain, deliberate pauses stretching silences pregnant with intent, and when he leaned to refill my juice, his fingers grazed my thigh, lingering just long enough to ignite, a promise etched in the casual graze. The penthouse's expanse mocked us from beyond the breakfast nook, empty living areas yawning like invitations, but here in this sunlit nexus we lingered, savoring the audacity of openness, the thrill of no locked doors or hushed breaths. Afternoon blurred into languor, the cityscape beyond the windows a hazy backdrop to our aimless orbit, gravity bending toward collision. We migrated to the living room, that sanctum of curated elegance, plush sectional and neutral suede, Coffee table laden with monolithic art books on modern architecture. Walls lined with family portraits in gilt frames, their subjects frozen in perpetual poise. Mother's smile beamed from a canvas of last year's Hamptons retreat, stepfather's arm around her waist a symbol of seamless merger, while we, the blended offspring, flanked them in adolescent awkwardness, our younger selves oblivious to the fissures ahead. Julian sprawled on the rug, an antique Persian threaded with crimson and indigo, its fibers soft under his back as he tugged me down beside him, the pull insistent yet playful, like reeling in a line cast too far. The portraits gazed down, smiles static and serene, unwitting sentinels to the desecration unfolding at their feet, and I hesitated only a beat, the rebellion blooming hot in my chest, a fire long banked now fanned freely. What followed was no shadowed ritual but a bold reclamation, bodies entwining on the opulent weave, the room's grandeur shrinking to the rhythm of breaths and the subtle creak of floorboards beneath. Sunlight slanted through sheer drapes, casting elongated shadows that danced across our forms, illuminating the contrast of his dark skin against the rug's muted palette, my paler limbs a counterpoint in the light's unforgiving wash. It was sacrilege, this invasion of the parental nest, a defiant smear against the glossy veneer of their lives, charity auctions and country club brunches, alliances forged in boardrooms rather than blood. Every shift, every press, echoed as insurrection, unraveling the threads of propriety they'd woven so meticulously around us, the portrait's eyes blind to the chaos but complicit in their judgment. Heat built in waves, cresting without restraint, and in the peak's haze his lips brushed my ear, voice a gravel whisper slicing through the din. We're the only real thing in this fake empire they've built. His words hung, a tether in the storm, pulling me deeper as I lifted my head, locking onto those obsidian depths where turmoil mirrored my own, fierce, unyielding, a reflection that stripped me bare. In his gaze, I saw not just the boy who'd once raided my closet for hoodies, but the man who'd become my vortex, drawing in the fragments of my unraveling self. This wasn't mere lust's fleeting spark or adolescent revolt against curfews and expectations. It had evolved, insidious and profound, into a whirlpool where escape meant dissolution, the current too strong to swim against. My fingers traced his shoulders, nails grazing the taut muscles honed by endless gym hours, the pad of my palm stark white against his umber hue, a visual hymn to our irreconcilable union, bloodlines crossed in the alchemy of one address. The contrast grounded me, a tactile anchor amid the spin, and in that touch certainty solidified. I'd raise the skyline, torch the portfolios propping this life, if it meant these hours stretched eternal, unmarred by return. Dusk painted the room in bruised purples, the city's lights flickering to life like hesitant stars. As we disentangled slowly, bodies slick and spent, the rug snap imprinted with our forms. Laughter escaped then, breathless and edged, a release valve for the intensity, Julian propping on elbows to survey the disarray. Cushions askew, a forgotten book splayed open like a casualty. I rose on unsteady legs, padding to the bar cart for water, the cool glass a balm against parched throat, while he watched, sated yet predatory, the afterglow sharpening his features into something almost tender. We spoke in low tones of trivialities, the weekend's menu, a playlist he'd curate for the sound system. But beneath the whisper lingered, an undergirding truth that reframed our every glance. The penthouse, once a stage for performances, now pulsed with authenticity, raw and unscripted. The portrait smiles hollow props in our private theater. Evening deepened into night, the atrium chandelier casting fractured prisms across ceilings, as we foraged the kitchen anew, assembling a meal from fridge remnants, charcuterie boards haphazardly plated, wine decanted into crystal that chimed like toasts to transgression. Seated on the sectional, legs tangled in careless proximity, we devoured with abandon, crumbs scattering like confetti from our revelry, conversation veering into uncharted territories, dreams deferred by parental blueprints, the itch of independence chafing against golden handcuffs. Julian's anecdotes carried bite, tales of stepfather's absences spun into indictments of emotional vacancy, and I countered with mother's veiled barbs, the passive-aggressive arts of high society laid bare. Vulnerability seeped in with the Merlot, loosening tongues, his hand finding my knee under the throw blanket, an anchor that steadied the confessions, turning rebellion into revelation. Sleep claimed us late, the master suite's king bet a vast expanse we claimed without guilt, Sheets whispering as we shifted closer, limbs interlocking like puzzle pieces forced to fit. Moonlight filtered through blinds, silvering the room's edges, and in the quiet doubts surfaced unbidden. Whispers of morality's ghost, the what-ifs of exposure fracturing the facade forever. But his arm draped heavy across my waist, a counterweight to the churn, breath steady against my neck, and I surrendered to the pull, the vortex's embrace a siren song drowning scruples. Dreams wove through the hours, fragmented visions of burning bridges and endless horizons, his form the constant amid the blaze, a compass pointing true north in the inferno we'd ignited. Saturday dawned crisp, the skyline shrouded in fog that mirrored my languid haze. Coffee brewing as ritual while Julian showered, steam billowing from the in-suite like exhaled secrets. We ventured to the terrace then, a glassed eyrie suspended above the grid, potted orchids nodding in the breeze, lounge chairs inviting repose. Wrapped in robes pilfered from the linen closet, we sipped espressos, feet bare on heated tiles, the world below a distant murmur. His fingers intertwined with mine across the low table, casual yet claiming, and in that suspended calm, the weekend spell deepened, time dilating to accommodate our unhurried exploration of spaces of selves, the penthouse a playground unbound by clocks or company. Exploration led us through forgotten corners, the library's leather-bound tomes dusted off for impromptu readings, voices overlapping in dramatic recitals that dissolved into kisses stolen mid-sentence. The home theater's recliners tested for endurance, screens flickering forgotten classics as backdrops to murmured debates on fate versus choice. Each room bore our mark subtly, a lingering scent, a rumpled throw, transforming the sterile into the sacred, our desecration a consecration of the profane. Laughter echoed freer, tensions uncoiling in the daylight's mercy, but beneath bubbled the intensity, ready to surge at a glance, a touch, the vortex ever hungry for more. By afternoon we retreated to the gym, a mirrored cavern of chrome and rubber, where exertion channeled the unrest, weights clanging in counterpoint to our synced breaths, yoga mats unrolled for stretches that blurred into grapples, playful at first then charged. Sweat beaded on his temple, tracing paths down his jaw, and I wiped it away with my thumb, the gesture intimate, grounding, his eyes holding mine with that mirrored depth, pulling me under anew. The mirrors multiplied us infinitely, reflections receding into eternity, a hall of us that mocked singularity, emphasizing the inescapable twining of our paths. Emerging flushed, we showered together, water cascading in the rainhead fixture, steam veiling the glass, touches lingering under the spray. A ritual of renewal that washed away exertion but etched deeper the bond. Dinner that night was improvised alchemy. Steak seared on the indoor grill, salads tossed with foraged herbs from the windowsill pots, candlelight from tapers scavenged from mother's vanity flickering across the dining expanse. We ate at the long table meant for 8, chairs pulled adjacent, elbows brushing in conspiracy, toasts raised to the absent overlords with ironic flourishes. Stories spilled freer, childhood escapades before the merge, the raw edges of loss that preceded our forced kinship, his mother's absence a shadow he'd carried silently, my father's ghost a specter in holiday silences. In vulnerability's glow, the whisper from yesterday resurfaced unprompted. This us. It's the truth they built everything to hide from. I nodded, throat tight, the flame dancing in his irises a beacon in the constructed dusk. Nightfall ushered us back to the rug. The living room a recurrent altar, portraits bearing witness anew as embers reignited into blaze. The peak arrived swift, unbridled, his form arching above, and in the crest's hush, my hand on his shoulder again, palms splayed wide, the skin's tonal duet a silent vow. The contrast mesmerized, light and dark in perpetual dialogue, emblem of our fusion's impossibility and allure. As aftershocks ebbed, I traced the line of his collarbone, pulse fluttering under fingertips, the realization crystallizing. This maelstrom wasn't transient, it was terminus, a singularity devouring alternatives. Willing to incinerate legacies, to watch empires crumble in ash, just to prolong this interlude, the weekend a fragile bubble against encroaching reality. Sunday crept in reluctant, sunlight harsher, stripping illusions as we stirred late, the bed a tangle of limbs and linens, his head on my chest await both comfort and omen. Breakfast was subdued, pancakes flipped with less flair, the island's marble cool under elbows as we lingered over syrup-slick plates, conversation dipping into the practical, their return by evening, the facade's reinstatement. Silence stretched heavier, laced with the ache of impending severance, his foot hooking my ankle under the counter, a final tether before the pull apart. The penthouse, once shrunk to intimacy, yawned expansively again, rooms reclaiming their isolation, the spell fracturing under dawn's pragmatic light. We filled hours with desultory tasks. Linen stripped and loaded into the laundry chute, surfaces wiped to erase traces, though the air held our imprint indelibly. In the library, shelving volumes, our hands brushed on a spine, pausing in a moment's suspension, eyes meeting with the vortex's familiar tug, but restraint one, a kiss pressed to knuckles instead, bittersweet concession. The terrace called once more. Fog lifted to reveal the sprawl in stark clarity. Coffees cooling untouched as we leaned on the railing, shoulders touching. The city a indifferent vastness below. Whispers turned philosophical on authenticity's cost, the illusion of control in lives scripted by others. And in his profile, etched against the blue, I saw the reflection anew, a self inseparable, the funnel's grip absolute. As evening loomed, the elevator's chime heralded approach, parental voices filtering up like harbingers, their weekend tales bubbling effervescent. We dispersed to roles rehearsed. Julian to his room for a playlist feigned curation, me to the kitchen for casual stirring of pots, mask slipping seamless into place. Mother's heels clicked announcement, stepfather's suitcase thumping behind, greetings exchanged in the foyer with hugs that felt performative, their glow undimmed by our shadowed interlude. Dinner convened as ritual, plates passed with anecdotes of auctions and acquaintances, our contributions muted, eyes avoiding the charged axis across the table. Yet under the cloth his foot grazed once, fleeting, a secret pulse affirming the weekend's indelibility. In bed that night, door locked at last, a gesture hollow now, the sheets felt foreign, vast without his warmth, the city's hum a mocking lullaby. Memories replayed in loops. The counter's chill, the rug's embrace, the whisper's weight, each a thread weaving tighter the vortex. At 20 we'd claimed a truth fiercer than blood, a rebellion etched in skin and silence, willing pyres for its preservation. But dawn would demand performance, the blended charade resuming, and in the quiet, I traced phantom contrasts on my arm, pale against imagined dark, the funnel's whisper promising no end, only deeper descent. Reality intruded not with a tentative knock but a shrill peal from the landline, slicing the night's velvet hush at 3 a.m, a blade through the fragile cocoon we'd spun. The penthouse, still humming with the weekend's reckless afterglow, felt suddenly vast and accusatory, the phone's insistent wail echoing off marble walls like a siren's call to reckoning. Julian and I lay tangled in the parents' master suite, a pinnacle of cynicism, our bodies lax in the king-sized bed that had always symbolized their unassailable union, sheets rumpled in our audacious claim. His arm draped heavy across my waist, breath steady against my shoulder, the faint musk of our earlier abandon lingering in the air like incense from a forbidden rite. I stirred first, heart lurching into wakefulness, the sound pulling me from the dregs of sleep where dreams had blurred boundaries further. The clock's red numerals glared accusation, and in that suspended instant before he moved, I clung to the illusion of isolation, the city beyond the curtains a distant, indifferent sea. Julian disentangled with a low groan, the mattress shifting under his weight as he swung legs over the edge, bare feet hitting the plush runner with a muffled thud. Moonlight filtered through half-drawn shears, street lamps below casting elongated shadows that painted his back in stripes of silver and obsidian, muscles coiling like a sentinel roused. He crossed to the nightstand, the phone's base a relic amid the room's sleek minimalism. Ebony wood and crystal decanters, mother's vanity a shrine to her curated poise. His hand closed around the receiver, lifting it with the reluctance of one who senses doom in the ring's persistence, voice roughened by sleep as he murmured a greeting. I propped on elbows, sheets pooling at my waist, the cool air raising gooseflesh on exposed skin, watching his profile sharpen in the dim glow, jaw set in that familiar line of guarded intensity. The conversation unfolded in monosyllables, his responses clipped, the cord twisting in his free hand like a vein under strain. I saw the change etch across his face before words confirmed it, the light from below carving hollows under his eyes, turning familiar features to stone, cheeks hollowing, lips thinning to a bloodless seam. His knuckles blanched around the plastic, grip vice-tight, as if anchoring to the instrument could halt the tide of information flooding through. The voice on the line droned clinical details: highway collision, head-on impact under rain-slicked asphalt, no survivors, the other vehicle a phantom in the chaos, and Julian's posture sagged imperceptibly, shoulders rounding under invisible weight, the predator's grace fracturing into something mortal exposed. He nodded into silence, though no one could see, eyes glazing over with the numb machinery of shock, the receiver hovering before he replaced it with deliberate care, the click a punctuation to finality. The room contracted, air thickening to syrup, the penthouse's opulence mocking us from every polished surface, a stage set for tragedy we'd unwittingly rehearsed. He turned then, sinking onto the bed's edge, gaze unfocused, drifting past me to the vanity's mirror where reflections doubled our disarray, hair tousled, skin marked faintly from hours unbridled. Accident, he said, voice hollowed, the word dropping like a pebble into abyss, ripples spreading through the quiet. On the interstate. Frontal smash. No chance for anyone. The facts landed blunt, unadorned, stripping the veneer from our stolen idol. The weekend's freedoms curdling into ash on my tongue. Mother's laughter from yesterday's arrival, stepfather's booming jests over reheated takeout, they fragmented into irretrievable shards, the blended family portrait shattered beyond repair. Our secret world, erected on adrenaline's high wire and the terror of exposure, teetered then plummeted, not from judgment's gavel but fate's indifferent scythe. No more shadows to dodge, no eyes to avert, the architects of our cage lay broken on blacktop miles away. Nausea surged, a bile-hot wave cresting my throat, and I bolted to the en-suite, porcelain cool under palms as I retched dryly, the tiles chill seeping into knees, world tilting in kaleidoscopic spins. Tears came unbidden, hot tracks carving paths down cheeks, not just for the void but the grotesquerie of it. Their lives snuffed while we desecrated their sanctum, bodies still warm from transgression. Julian followed, silhouette in the doorway, hand hovering at my back without touching, a ghost of comfort in his hesitation. Water ran cold from the faucet, splashing face in futile ablution, rinsing salt but not the stain of survival's sharp edge. Emerging, I met his eyes, mirrors of my turmoil, dark pools reflecting grief's raw geometry. The man who'd whispered rebellions now adrift in the wake. We collapsed onto the bed anew, not in embrace but adjacency, shoulders brushing in shared orbit, the sheet's crispness a mockery of intimacy now poisoned by loss. Through the shock's fog, grief unfurled tendrils, memories surfacing like wreckage. Mother's hands braiding my hair on mornings crisp with autumn, her voice a melody of expectations laced with love. Stepfather's rare evenings home, teaching Julian chess on the library board, his deep timbre unraveling strategies with patient thunder. They weren't flawless, absences chronic, affections conditional on poise, but anchors nonetheless, tethering us to a narrative of ascent, from merged fortunes to this eyrie. Now unmoored, the penthouse loomed cavernous, echoes amplifying absence, the city below indifferent to the chasm. Julian's breath hitched beside me, a fracture in his stoicism, and I reached, fingers lacing his, the contact a lifeline amid flotsam, our illicit bond the sole continuity in the deluge. Yet beneath the sorrow's swell, a monstrous undercurrent stirred, relief insidious and gleaming, threading through the ache like venom in vein. No more performances at breakfast nooks, no veiled glances across dining expanses, the overseers gone, their judgments silenced forever. Freedom bloomed grotesque, petals unfurling in the ruin, we, sole heirs to the empire of glass and guilt, unencumbered by scrutiny, the skyline ours unchallenged. The thought twisted in my chest, equal parts liberation and loathing. For what worth this autonomy bartered in blood? Their final drive a toll we'd never paid? I pressed palm to mouth, stifling the sob that carried that secret thrill, Julian's grip tightening as if sensing the duality, his own silence heavy with unspoken parallels. Dawn crept reluctant, gray light leaching through curtains to gray the room's whites to ash, the clock ticking past 4, then 5, each minute a grindstone on raw nerves. We rose mechanically, shedding the bed's tainted cocoon for robes pilfered from hooks, his too broad on my frame, hers a silk shroud on his, padding to the kitchen where coffee brewed on autopilot, its aroma cloying against nausea. Mugs steamed untouched on the island, condensation beating like tears. As we sat in vigil, phones silent sentinels awaiting official cascades. Conversation emerged fragmentary. Recollections of last words, mother's parting hug scented with Chanel, stepfather's wink promising spoils from the auction. Laughter cracked once, brittle as frost, over a shared absurdity, a forgotten umbrella in the foyer, and dissolved into quiet, the humor a bridge too frail for the gulf. Officialdom intruded by 7, a detective's call laced with condolences scripted for the bereaved elite, details parceled in euphemisms. Inclement weather, mechanical failure, no fault assigned yet. Arrangements loomed. Autopsies, repatriation. The machinery of mourning for those who'd orchestrated lives like symphonies. Julian handled it, voice steadying into boardroom timbre, the heir apparent surfacing amid wreckage, while I nodded mutely, tracing patterns in marble veins, the cool stone grounding the surreal drift. Reporters would swarm soon, headlines etching our names in scandal's ink, but for now the penthouse held its breath, a mausoleum of luxury where grief fermented unchecked. Mid-morning brought the lawyer, summoned by Julian's terse directive, a silver-haired functionary in bespoke wool, briefcase brimming with precedents and probate. He arrived via private elevator, face etched with professional sorrow, settling at the conference table with folios that mapped the empire. Holdings in tech conglomerates, real estate spanning boroughs, trusts ballooning to 9 figures. Mother and stepfather's wills, mirrored in foresight, named us joint executors, beneficiaries unencumbered. The merger's fruits ripened for our grasp. His voice droned clauses, guardianships obsolete at our ages, discretionary funds immediate, the windfall a cold comfort amid the heat of loss. Julian leaned forward, elbows on glass, questions probing like scalpels, while I observed from periphery, the documents legalese a blur, mind snagging on the irony. Their deaths unlocked doors we'd rattled chains against, freedom's key forged in catastrophe. The meeting dissolved into assurances of discretion, NDAs for staff, a funeral timeline sketched in pencil strokes, private service, Hampton's interment, media blackouts via influence. As he departed, the penthouse exhaled, but the air hung heavier, laden with the weight of what we'd inherited. Not just assets but the mantle, decisions devolving to us, the blended remnants now architects of our fate. Julian poured scotch from the decanter, amber liquid glinting like captured sunset, handing me a tumbler with a nod that bypassed words. We clinked in silence, the burn a ritual ablution, chasing numbness through veins, the city's midday clamor filtering up like white noise to our isolation. Afternoon waned in desultory motion, calls to kin, distant aunts murmuring sympathies, cousins offering flights we declined, the web of relations fraying at edges. I retreated to the terrace, wind whipping hair across face, the area precarious perch above the grid where lives pulsed oblivious. Below, taxis snaked in yellow rivulets, pedestrians ant-small in pursuits mundane, and I envied their anonymity, the simplicity of commutes unscarred by legacy's blade. Julian joined, leaning on railing beside, shoulder a solid abutment, his presence the vortex reformed, grief's gale bending us closer, the taboo now unjudged, blooming unchecked in the void. His hand found mine, fingers threading rough, and in that clasp relief resurfaced unmasked. No more stolen nights, only endless ones, the penthouse our unchallenged domain. Doubt coiled then, a serpent in the garden of gain. Had we summoned this, our rebellions a curse rebounding, the universe's wry equilibrium for sins unspoken? Mother's lectures on karma, delivered over teas with crystal cups, echoed faint, her belief in cosmic ledgers now a punchline from the grave. Yet the gift twisted sweeter in contemplation. Alone in the colossus of concrete and steel, heirs to vaults that dwarfed our 20s, free to chart courses unvetted, the skyline bowing to our whim. I voiced it haltingly, words tumbling over wind. It's over. The hiding. But at what cost? Julian's gaze fixed horizonward, jaw working silently before he replied, voice gravellow. Punishment, maybe. Or the only way out they could give. The ambiguity hung, a riddle without resolution, the breeze carrying it seaward. Evening draped the city in sodium haze, lights igniting like fireflies in jars, as we foraged dinner from chilled platters, caviar untouched since brunch, crackers scattering crumbs like ash. Seated on the sectional, plates balanced precarious, we ate in communion, forks clinking counterpoint to the hush, conversation veering to futures unshackled. University deferrals, travels penciled in margins of planners, the empire's reigns ours to grip or release. His enthusiasm flickered, plans laced with the fire of possibility, eyes alight in a way grief hadn't fully dimmed, and I mirrored it, the relief metastasizing, eclipsing sorrow's shadow. Laughter surfaced tentative, over visions of boardrooms conquered or abandoned for hostels in haze-shrouded east, the absurdity of our elevation a balm to the bruise. Night deepened, the master suite shunned for neutral ground, the library's leather armchairs cradling forms, fire crackling in the hearth from logs we'd stacked haphazard. Books flanked us, spines gold-embossed sentinels to knowledge we'd skimmed, now tomes of potential inheritance. Julian read aloud from a volume on dynasties, voice-modulating ironies of bloodlines forged in fire, his free hand tracing my arm in idle loops, the touch a hint of continuity amid rupture. Warmth spread from the contact, chasing chill of loss, and in the firelight's dance, our reflections in window panes merged inseparable, the taboo transmuted to norm unscrutinized. Sleep beckoned late, claimed on the rug before flames, bodies curled in loose alliance, dreams threading grief with glimmers of dominion. Monday dawned administrative, suits donned for meetings downtown, funeral directors in hushed offices, florists murmuring lilies and laurels, the rituals a choreography of closure. Julian navigated with poise borrowed from stepfather, signatures flowing fluid on ledgers, while I observed, pen hovering, the finality of ink a seal on epochs. Lunch in a clubroom overlooking harbors, plates of seared scallops untouched, toasts to the departed murmured among proxies, their condolences a veneer over curiosity's gleam. Returning, the penthouse welcomed with echoing voids, staff dismissed to minimal, the space ours utterly, freedom's expanse both exhilarating and echoing. Afternoon dissolved into paperwork avalanches, wills dissected by paralegals, assets apportioned in spreadsheets glowing on screens, the windfall materializing in wire transfers that padded accounts to opulence. We pored over figures side by side at the desk, shoulders brushing in concentration, his annotations sharp, mine tentative, the collaboration a foretaste of partnership unyoked. Doubt resurfaced in lulls, whispers of guilt's ledger. Had our vortex exacted tribute, the crash a cosmic invoice for indulgences? Yet the gift prevailed, seductive in its scope. No more masks at family tables, only us architects of an unblended realm. The city a canvas for strokes bold and unjudged. As twilight bled into neon, we dined on the terrace, stars pricking velvet dome, wine flowing crimson in stems, toasts evolving from sorrow to speculation, estates to claim, charities to redirect, lives rewritten sans oversight. His foot hooked mine under table, a subtle anchor, eyes holding the fire of shared horizons, and relief solidified, monstrous yet mine. The punishment, if such, borne willingly for this perversion of providence. The question lingered unresolved, a shadow at feast's edge, but in his gaze the answer gleamed, gift twisted and gleaming, ours to unwrap in the ruins. Insomnia gripped post-midnight, bed vast in solitude. I'd claimed my room, the master's taint too fresh, staring at ceilings where shadows played judgment's mime. Memories cycled. Mother's final embrace, firm with unspoken pride. Stepfather's clap on Julian's back, a baton passed unwittingly. Grief crested anew, sobs muffled in pillows, but ebbed into acceptance's tide, the relief a constant undertow. At 3 again the phone lay dormant, its silence a vow unbroken, and I rose to windows, city aglow in perpetual vigil, our new dominion pulsing below. Heirs to bloodied thrones, free in chains dissolved, the vortex widened to encompass all punishment or prize, the line blurred in night's embrace. The funerals blurred into a haze of black crepe and murmured condolences, a procession through fog-shrouded Hampton's lanes where the sea's salt tang mingled with the scent of lilies wilting in crystal vases. I stood beside Julian at the graveside, our hands brushing in the chill autumn wind, anchors in the surreal drift of eulogies delivered by proxies, lawyers intoning legacies, distant kin reciting virtues we'd glimpsed only in glimpses. Mother's casket gleamed mahogany under gray skies, stepfathers adjacent like a mismatched pair in eternal repose, the earth swallowing them with mechanical precision, shovels scraping like accusations. Reporters lurked at perimeter fences, lenses glinting predatory, but security herded them back, the elite's veil of privacy a flimsy net over our unraveling. Julian's profile remained carved stone, jaw clenched against the tremor I felt in his fingers, our shared silence a bulwark against the well-wisher's platitudes, their hugs clammy with curiosity veiled as sympathy. In that throng, I felt the vortex tighten, our secret now the sole thread binding us amid the frayed tapestry of family, the crowd's faces dissolving into anonymity as rain began to spit, blurring mascara and resolve alike. Back in the penthouse, the days bled into a numb routine, mirrors draped in black silk that caught dust motes like trapped stars, the air heavy with the hush of absence. Meals arrived via discreet deliveries, trays of poached salmon and artisanal breads we picked at mechanically, flavors muted as if grief had sanded our tongues. Julian paced the terrace at odd hours, phone pressed to ear in calls to executors, his voice a low rumble negotiating repatriations and asset freezes, the city sprawl below indifferent to our bereavement. I wandered rooms like a specter, fingers trailing banisters worn smooth by years of descents, inhaling echoes of mother's perfume in the vanity's drawers, stepfather's cigar ash ghosting the study's ashtray. Sleep fragmented into fevered snatches, dreams replaying the crash's phantom screech, tires on wet asphalt, their laughter cut mid-note. Waking drenched, I'd find Julian in the kitchen pre-dawn, scotch glass sweating condensation, his eyes hollowed by the same haunt, a nod our only communion before dawn's gray light summoned the facade anew. A week post-interment, resolve hardened into action. We couldn't linger in this mausoleum of memories, the penthouse's vastness now a echo chamber amplifying loss. Over lukewarm tea one evening, Julian sketched plans on a napkin. Sell the airy, liquidate holdings, relocate to California where sun-scorched coasts promised reinvention, far from East Coast winters laced with ghosts. Malibu, he said, pen-scratching waves and palm icons, or Big Sur, somewhere the ocean drowns out the noise. I nodded, tracing the napkin's creases, the idea a lifeline tossed into our drift, visions of cliffside rentals and anonymous drives along Pacific highways stirring a tentative spark amid the ash. Realtors were summoned next dawn, clipboards bristling with comps and staging advice, their enthusiasm a jarring counterpoint to our leaden steps through showings, highlighting crown moldings we'd once cursed, envisioning buyers in spaces stained by our secrets. Packing commenced piecemeal, boxes labeled in sharpest scrawls, kitchen fragile, books donate. Each seal a excision of the past, though the weight lingered intangible ballast we carried westward in our bones. The stepfather's study yielded slowest, a sanctum of walnut paneling and leather-bound ledgers, his desk a battleship helm where deals were brokered and empires charted. We tackled it midweek, mid-morning light slanting through blinds to stripe the Persian rug in gold bars, dust motes swirling like confetti from disturbed shelves. Julian hauled file cabinets to the curb for shredding services, his shirt sleeves rolled to elbows revealing corded forearms veined from tension, while I knelt before the safe, combination yielded by the lawyer's rote recitation, birth dates intertwined, a irony lost then. The door swung open with a pneumatic sigh disgorging stacks of stock certificates and bond folios, crisp as new snow, their values ballooning our futures into abstractions. I sifted methodically, sorting into piles for auctioneers. Blue chips segregated, municipals bundled, the monotony a balm against the ache, each paper a talisman of provision we'd inherited unsolicited. The air grew stuffy, laced with old ink and faint tobacco, the room's confines pressing like a confessional booth, our movements synced in quiet efficiency, elbows brushing in the narrow space. Beneath the equities avalanche, my fingers snagged on something yielding, a manila folder, edges frayed and tobacco yellowed, as if exhumed from a forgotten drawer, its clasp rusted shut like a sealed vow. Curiosity pricked, sharper than the paper cuts dotting my palms, and I pried it free, the contents spilling in a cascade. Envelopes postmarked 21 years prior, stamps faded to ghosts, and a clutch of photographs, corners curled from years in confinement. The top image arrested me. Mother, lithe and unlined at perhaps 22, her laughter frozen mid-bloom, head thrown back in abandon against a sun-dappled beach, arms encircled by a man whose broad shoulders and easy grin I knew too well. Stepfather, younger, his dark skin glowing under tropical light, no trace of the boardroom gravitas that later armored him. They weren't the polished pair of merger announcements. This was raw, clandestine, a stolen weekend in the Caribbean, judging by the hibiscus blooms framing their embrace, her sundress hiked by wind, his hand possessive at her waist. More followed. Poses in Parisian cafes, her fingers laced in his over croissants. A candid in a vineyard, corkscrew curls framing her face as he poured wine, eyes locked in conspiratorial gleam. Dates scrawled on backs in her looping script. Summer of 2003, autumn jaunts defying continents. A timeline predating the blended narrative weed swallowed whole. My pulse quickened, a staccato against ribs as I delved deeper. The letters' wax seals cracked like fragile eggshells, ink bleeding faintly from humidity's kiss. Epistles unfolded in her hand, fervent and fevered. Professions of longing amid prior commitments. Husbands mentioned in shadowed strokes as obstacles to our truth. Plans for futures unmoored by vows exchanged in haste. His replies, typed on letterhead from nascent ventures, echoed the urgency. This fire won't bank for respectability. We'll burn through it together. The romance predated us by years, a parallel life woven in secrecy, their paths crossing at a gala or conference, igniting against the tinder of dissatisfaction. Her first marriage a youthful misstep, his a cultural mismatch. No mention of children then, only dreams of legacies untainted. The affair a rebellion against pedigrees that chained them. I traced a photo's edge, mother's eyes alight with the wildness I'd glimpsed only in old albums, stepfather's arm a shield around her, an envy twisted brief, for that uncalculated joy, before fortunes demanded decorum's mask. Tremors started in my fingertips, spreading to knees as I unearthed the folder's nadir. A medical form, parchment thin and yellowed, emblazoned with a hospital header from the city's finest maternity ward. Unfolding it felt profane, the paper whispering accusations, my breath shallow in the study's hush. Atop, mother's name, maiden then, typed in stark courier. Below, stepfathers listed as paternal referent. Then the DNA assay results, columns of genetic markers aligning with chilling precision, matches in loci that screamed certainty, probabilities cresting 99.9. My birth date anchored the base. 9 months post the letter's fevered peaks, a calendar's inexorable math rendering me no stepchild but full progeny, blood of both surging through veins I'd thought divided. The room tilted, safe maw gaping like judgment's throat, papers fluttering to the rug in disarray, my gasp a fracture in the quiet. Julian, stacking ledgers nearby, froze mid-lift, his gaze snapping to the scatter, question forming on lips before the document's damning array snuffed it. He crossed in 3 strides, snatching the sheaf from my numb grasp, knees folding to the floor beside me, the Persian's weave muffling his descent. His eyes, dark as oiled mahogany, scanned voraciously, photos first, a flicker of recognition tightening his brow, then letters devoured in swallows, creases deepening as timelines coalesced. The medical sheet last, his finger tracing the columns like a blind man reading braille, breath suspending as probabilities tallied irrefutable. Silence ballooned, oppressive as a vault seal, the study's clock ticking mockery, a metronome to revelations unspooling. We weren't steps forged in merger's forge. We shared Genesis, one womb, one seed, the blended myth a scaffold concealing their premarital tryst, hidden to salvage reputations from scandal's blaze. Divorces averted, alliances preserved, us unwitting props in their sanitized union. The affair's embers had kindled twins, separated by narrative slight, Julian born months prior in a hushed clinic abroad. His mother's passing a cover for the indiscretion, repatriated as orphan heir to stepfather's solo claim. The weight settled, leaden in chest, as implications unfurled like venomous fronds, the touches we'd stolen, the nights entwined, no longer taboo's thrilling fringe but nature's core revulsion, incest profane not binding us irrevocably. I searched his face for the recoil, the horror that should erupt, disgust curling lip, eyes widening in abject denial, a scramble to unmake what blood now branded sin. But as he lifted gaze slow, deliberate, meeting mine across the strewn evidence, no such storm brewed. Instead, darkness pooled deeper, obsidian swallowing light, a void that absorbed the shock without ripple, intensifying to something abyssal, unnameable. It wasn't revulsion's flare but amplification, the vortex we danced at edge now yawning infinite, our connection not severed by truth but sanctified in its grotesquerie, blood calling to blood in primal echo. Nausea crested anew, not grief's echo but revulsion's kin, while rising as I lurched to standing, papers crunching under heel like brittle bones. The study spun, paneling blurring into vertigo's smear, Julian's form rising fluid beside, hand outstretched but unclaiming, hovering in the charged gulf. "Lily," he murmured, voice threadbare, not plea but invocation, the syllable laden with the revelation's gravity, pulling me back from abyss's lip. I recoiled, palm-slapping desk for brace, would cool under sweat-slick skin. The safe's innards mocking with banal wealth amid domestic apocalypse. How many dinners had we sat, ignorant of the lie propping plates? Mother's smiles veiling not just merger strains but this foundational deceit. Stepfather's nods, paternal and facade, now laced with the authenticity we'd craved unwittingly. The penthouse, once cage, now crypt of deceptions, every corner whispering complicity in the charade that birthed us entwined. He gathered the documents methodically, folding them into the folder with care bordering reverence, as if sealing a relic rather than indictment, his movements a counter to my tremor. They hid it for us, he said, tone even, dissecting the motive like a clause in contract. Previous spouses spared humiliation, careers untorched, the twins petitioned to preserve the empire's gleam. But beneath resentment simmered a low boil. For the isolation masked as blending, the secrets eroding trust weed mistaken for enmity. I sank to the desk chair, leather sighing under weight, fingers kneading temples where migraine bloomed, the darkness in his eyes mirroring inward, a chasm where horror should rage but found only resonance, the taboo's escalation forging chains unbreakable. California beckoned fainter now, sunlit escape tainted by blood's indelible ink, the move not severance but extension of the lie we'd lived, now knowing. Afternoon waned in suspended animation, the study abandoned for the terrace where wind whipped coastal gusts inland, scouring faces raw. We leaned on balustrade, folder tucked under Julian's arm like contraband, the skyline a jagged horizon mocking our fracture. Conversation emerged halting, queries on timelines, his birth in a Swiss clinic, hushed to kin as adoption, my delivery sanitized in society pages as first wife's legacy. Laughter cracked once, jagged as fault lines, over imagined headlines had truth leaked, scandal eclipsing mergers, fortunes fledged on farce. But mirth died swift, yielding to the void's expansion, his proximity no longer thrill but tether of shared origin, the brush of arms electric with forbidden depth. Below, the city churned oblivious, taxis birthing exhaust clouds, and I wondered at the irony. Parents' deceit birthed freedom's cruelest jest, binding us in blood's unyielding loop. Evening draped us in twilight's bruise, dinner forsaken for wine on the sectional, glasses clinking hollow toasts to ghosts unresurrectable. Julian poured the folder anew by lamplight, annotations in margin with pencil nubs, queries for therapists versed in legacies concealed, perhaps a geneticist's confirmation to seal the wound. Yet his posture eased into contemplation, shoulders shedding initial rigidity, the darkness in eyes not despair but depth, absorbing the blow as fuel for the fire we'd kindled unwitting. I watched, wine sour on tongue, the realization metastasizing. This truth didn't repel. It magnetized, the vortex's core revealed as consanguine, our pulls not accident but inheritance, the parents' hidden flame leaping generations in profane relay. Sleep evaded, claimed in fits on separate couches, dreams threading letters into nightmares, mother's laugh morphing to wail, stepfather's embrace a cage snapping shut. Dawn broke brittle, packing resuming with mechanical fervor, boxes sealed against the revelation's seep, though it permeated air like ozone post-storm. Realtor's callback buzzed approval, offer above ask, closing swift, and we nodded through logistics, voices pitched neutral, the California dream reframed. Not flight but forging, a coast where bloodlines blurred in waves crash. Julian stowed the folder in his valise, a talisman or toxin, his glance lingering waited, the denser dark a promise unspoken, that horror's absence heralded surrender, the taboo's apex not rupture but refinement, our path inexorable. As movers arrived, swarming like locusts, I traced the study's empty safe, echo of secrets exhumed, the penthouse's sail a shedding skin, westward bound with shadows elongated. Preparations accelerated, flights booked to survey rentals, oceanfront lofts in Santa Monica, vines cloaking walls in Napa enclaves, visions sketched in shared docs, collaborative as our unraveling. Staff dismissed with severance packets, their nods laced with pity's edge, oblivious to the deeper fracture. In lulls the darkness resurfaced, his hand on nape during packing tape's rip, a graze hinting continuity unbroken, the blood's call a siren undeterred. Guilt gnawed peripheral, had we intuited the pull predestined? But yielded to fatalism, the parents lie a cradle rocking us to this precipice. California loomed beacon and abyss, sun bleaching memories or baking them eternal, our twin fates scripted in Jean's cipher. Closing day dawned crisp, signatures flowing on dotted lines in lawyer's office. The penthouse deeded away like a chapter folded, keys surrendered to stranger's grasp. We departed midday, valises light, the elevator's descent a symbolic plunge, lobby's marble echoing finality. At the airport, lounges cocooned us in leather hush, cocktails sipped to dull the jet's hum. His eyes across the low table holding that thickened void, horror unmet, only hunger refined, the revelation a catalyst alchemizing taboo to truth. Wheels lifted, city receding to grid of lights, and in a sense thrill, I leaned head to shoulder, the contact bled deep, the vortex's maw widening to swallow horizons, California not end but expanse of the dark weed claimed as home. Julian flicked open the lighter, the metallic snick echoing sharp in the study's hush, a prelude to erasure that hung heavier than the dust motes suspended in afternoon's slant. Flame bloomed sudden, a hungry tongue of orange licking the air, casting his face in flickering resolve, jaw set like forged iron, eyes narrowed to slits that swallowed the light rather than reflect it. He held the DNA sheet steady, its yellowed edges trembling faintly in his grip, the clinical print stark against the fire's glow. Columns of matches that damned us not as steps but siblings, blood's unyielding verdict. The corner caught first, ink blackening to char as cellulose ignited, curling inward like a secret recoiling from exposure. I stood frozen, breath shallow in my chest, the penthouse's vast emptiness pressing in from corridors beyond, but my hand didn't rise to halt him, no protest forming on lips numbed by the morning's unraveling. Instead, a strange detachment bloomed, watching truth transmute to ash, the sole tangible proof of our shared genesis dissolving into ephemeral wisps that spiraled upward, fragile as the lies we'd inherited. The paper fed the blaze greedily, edges frizzling to lace before collapsing into blackened petals that fluttered down, spent and innocuous, onto the hearth's slate tiles. We lingered by the fireplace, its maw dormant until this ritual invocation, the folder's remnants, letters singed at tips, photos spared for now but destined for the same pyre, stacked beside like offerings to oblivion. Flames danced low, devouring the past in controlled fury. Mother's fervent scrawls reduced to cinders, stepfather's typed vows crumbling to dust, our unwitting conception a footnote erased in heat's impartial judgment. Their sins, the affair's fever-birthing twins veiled in deception, fed the fire alongside ours. The nights we'd claimed in shadows, touches that blurred from enmity to entanglement, now retroactively profane. No one would know. The world beyond these walls would mourn us as the blended survivors, step-siblings forged in tragedy's kiln, our deeper not concealed in the smoke venting up the flue, dispersing into the skyline's indifferent blue. Relief uncoiled then, serpentine through my veins, not the clean absolution of confession but a shadowed absolution, self-forged in the act of destruction. The study's air thickened with acrid bite, char mingling with old leather and varnish, a perfume of purgation that eased the knot in my throat. Julian extinguished the lighter with a snap, pocketing it like a talisman reclaimed, his silhouette etched against the grate's glow, broader now in the fire's afterimage. He turned, steps measured across the rug's weave, closing the distance with that predatory economy that had always unmade me, and now, armed with blood's verdict, his approach should have scorched, shame's brand searing flesh where fingers might land, revulsion a barrier thicker than propriety's veil. Yet as he drew near, palm cupping my elbow, the contact landed warm, unyielding, a current that hummed familiar rather than incendiary, pulling me inexorably into orbit. I yielded, body angling toward him without volition, the vortex's pull refined by revelation, no longer illicit thrill but inexorable law. My head found his chest, ear pressing to the steady thunder beneath cotton shirt, that rhythmic cadence syncing with my own, a dual pulse, one blood's echo resonating through bone and sinew, the shared origin not divider but amplifier. His arms encircled, loose at first then tightening, a cage I leaned into, inhaling the faint salt of his skin, the cologne's woodsy undernote a constant amid the flux. In that hold, the study's confines expanded, walls receding to encompass the penthouse's hollows, the city beyond a canvas we'd soon vacate. But here, in this interlude of ash and ember, certainty solidified. We'd chosen erasure over exile, the flame our confessor absolving what society would damn. His chin rested atop my hair, breath-stirring strands and silence wrapped us, profound as the secrets it preserved. We lingered thus until the fire sputtered low, coals glowing sullen red. The hearth a pyre sated, leaving only faint scars on stone to mark the rite. Julian released me gradual, fingers trailing arm in a graze that lingered like aftersmoke. His eyes meeting mine, dark pools deepened by the deed. Holding no regrets flicker but a resolute gleam. Confederates pack sealed in cinders. It's done, he murmured, voice gravel-low. Not query but affirmation. The words a bridge spanning the chasm revelation had yawned. I nodded, throat tight with unsaid vows. The folder's survivors. Photos curled at edges. Letters ash-dusted envelopes. Gathered by his hand for the great's final feast. One by one they fed the remnants. Mother's beachside laugh blackening to void. Stepfather's vineyard gaze dissolving to nothing. Each consumption a thread severed from the past's tether, freeing us to the present's uncharted drift. Outside, the autumn air bit crisp, leaves skittering across the lobby's marble like fleeing specters. The doorman's nod a perfunctory veil over our altered auras. Our bags waited curbside, valises slim with essentials, passports, laptops, the empire's liquid wealth transferred to offshore streams. Movers having stripped the penthouse to echo earlier that week. The car idled, a sleek black sedan summoned for the final leg. Driver anonymous behind tinted glass. Engines per a counterpoint to the city's distant clamor. Julian held the door, hand at nape guiding me in, the leather seat cool against thighs, a brief sanctuary before ascent. As wheels peeled from the curb, the building receded in the side mirror, its facade a monolith of glass and steel glinting farewell. The life therein auctioned to strangers who'd never unearthed the strata of deceit we'd incinerated. The drive unfolded in suspended hush, Manhattan's arteries pulsing with evening rush. Taxis weaving yellow threads, pedestrians blurring into hurried silhouettes under sodium lamps igniting one by one. Streetlights painted Julian's profile in staccato gold, highlighting the resolve etched deeper since the study's blaze. His free hand drumming faint on the armrest, a rhythm echoing our synced hearts. I watched the cityscape morph, high rises yielding to bridges' graceful spans, the Hudson's dark ribbon reflecting fractured neon like shattered vows. Memories flickered unbidden. Dinners in that now vacant dining hall, mother's napkin flicks masking mergers, stepfather's chuckles rumbling over steaks we'd sliced in feigned civility. Their ghosts rode with us, intangible passengers in the rearview, but the ashes' liberation exorcised their hold, transmuting judgment to irrelevance. Our trajectory westward a repudiation of their scripted stage. His hand descended then, settling on my knee with possessive weight, fingers splaying wide over denim, the squeeze a claim unapologetic, threading warmth through fabric to skin beneath. No hesitation shadowed the gesture. Knowledge of blood only honed its edge, transforming touch from forbidden spark to foundational right. The pressure of vow renewed in motion's flow. I covered his knuckles with my palm, tracing the ridges there. Calluses from weights lifted in Jim's mirrored isolation, scars faint from boyhood scrapes we'd shared unwittingly as twins veiled. Skin on skin grounded me, the contact a microcosm of our pact. Erasure not denial but defiance, choosing the flame's absolution over confessional's cross. A smile curved my lips, unbidden yet inevitable, the curve conspiratorial, edged with the thrill of accomplices who'd outwitted morality's wardens. Our crime not against flesh but the facades propping it. That smile lingered as traffic ebbed, the tunnel's maw swallowing us into subterranean dim, headlights carving tunnels through gloom, the city's underbelly a metaphor for secrets buried alive. Conversation surfaced sparse. Logistics murmured, connecting flight in Chicago, rental confirmed in Santa Barbara, a cliffside eyrie with views to infinity, plans sketched post-revelation, resilient as weeds through concrete. Julian's voice carried lighter timbre, the darkness in eyes tempered to velvet depth, no longer abyss but anchor, the burning of baptism clarifying our course. I leaned head to window, cool glass soothing temples throb, watching taillights string like rosaries in the dark, each beat a mile marker from the pyre. Relief evolved here in transit's limbo. Not glee's sharp but a profound easement, the world's ignorance our greatest ally, step-siblings in print, lovers in truth, the duality a armor forged in fire's temper. Emerging topside, Queen's sprawl greeted with industrial grit, warehouses hulking shadows, freight trains moaning distant laments, contrasting the penthouse's polish, a gritty prelude to reinvention's coast. The driver's radio hummed soft jazz, saxophone wailing low like unsung elegies, and Julian's thumb stroked idle circles on my knee, the motion hypnotic, lulling doubt's faint whispers. What penance might gods demand for such hubris? Genetics law flouted. Divine edicts bartered for flesh's imperative. Yet the question dissolved in the gesture's rhythm, our choice crystalline. Love's metric outweighing biology's ledger. The taboo not curse but crown, worn defiant against heaven's glare. Laughter bubbled once, soft and shared. Over imagined tabloid frenzy had ashes not prevailed. Air's incestuous empire. Crash cover-up? The absurdity a shield. Mirth the mortar binding our resolve. JFK loomed eventual, its terminals a hive of transient souls. Businessmen barking into phones, families herding luggage like flocks. Our emergence into the throng a seamless blend, hands unlinked but energies entwined. Check-in flowed automated, passport scanned with beeps affirming identities curated, boarding passes crisp talismans to exodus. Lounges cocooned us next, plush armchairs cradling forms weary from day's inferno, cocktails arriving amber and chilled, gin for him, tonics bite for me, sipped in toasts unspoken, glasses chiming like sealed oaths. Ambient chatter washed over, oblivious polyphony of delays and destinations, while we orbited in bubble of intimacy, knees brushing under low tables, his gaze across the rim holding that conspirator's gleam, the smile's echo promising horizons unmarred by mirrors. Boarding bridged the limbo, jetway's carpet muffling steps, the cabin's hush enveloping as seats reclined in first-class berth, privacy screens drawn like veils on our pact. Engines whined prelude to lift, fuselage shuddering as wheels surrendered to sky, the runway's light streaking to stars in a sense blur. I press palm to window, cloud swallowing the grid below. New York's constellation winking farewell, a metropolis we'd haunted now receding to myth. Julian's hand found mine across the armrest, fingers interlocking with finality, the squeeze a punctuation to departure, blood's rhythm pulsing through joined veins. In that altitude's rarefied air, freedom unfurled absolute. No pyre's ash to haunt, only forwards vast, the secret our keel, steadying the vessel through tempests unseen. California materialized at dawn's cusp, the plain slicing descent through strata of pink and gold, Pacific's azure expanse unrolling like promise kept. LAX sprawl greeted with palm fronds rattling in breeze, taxis queuing yellow under relentless sun, the air laced with eucalyptus and exhaust. A new lexicon of scents erasing East's chill. Rental gleamed curbside, convertible top down to invite wind's caress, keys tossed casual as we claimed it, bags tossed rearward in carefree arc highway unfurled northbound, Pacific coast ribboning left, cliffs plunging to foam-lashed rocks, the ocean's roar a bass undertow to radio's indie strum. Julian drove, one hand wheel steady, the other reclaiming my knee, possessive arc unyielding, the road's curve mirroring our trajectory, winding yet true, secrets ballast against scales. Stops punctuated the ribbon. Roadside stands hawking avocados plump as hearts, picnics on bluffs where gulls wheeled white against blue, sandwiches unwrapped on checkered cloths, crumbs fed to wind. Laughter flowed freer here, unburdened by ash's weight, tales of futures sketched. Galleries for my sketches, ventures for his ventures, a life unscripted sans parental prods. Sun dipped eventual, painting waves crimson, our shadows elongating on sand as we wandered barefoot, foam nipping toes, the Pacific's chill a baptismal wash. His arm slung shoulder pulling close against salt spray, the contact blood deep yet unchained, the burning's gift. Truth consigned, love liberated, the taboo transmuted to talisman worn inward. Santa Barbara welcome twilight veiled, stucco villas glowing terracotta, our rental a sprawl of white adobe hugging hillside, decks cantilevered over canyons blooming bougainvillea. Unpacking unfolded languid, clothes hung in closets vast, books stacked on shelves facing sea, the space echoing yet inviting, a canvas blank for strokes joint. Dinner emerged from markets. Clams steamed with garlic, salads crisp with heirloom tomatoes, wine poured sunset-hued on terrace where stars pricked velvet dome. Toasts raised to absences honored in silence, then to presences affirmed. His eyes across candle flicker holding the pack's depth, smile mirroring mine, accomplices in morality's breach, the crime perfected in its invisibility. Night cloaked the coast in indigo hush, waves cadence lulling through screens, our forms converging on the master suite's expanse, sheets sun-bleached and vast. Touches hinted rather than claimed, limbs tangling in whisper of continuity. The rhythm shared a symphony of one blood's verse, unjudged in this new domain. Sleep claimed gentle, dreams threading horizons endless, no pyres or proofs to haunt, only dawn's gold-filtering blinds, promising days unyoked. Weed bartered repentance for oblivion, love's scale tipping against genetics' cold math, divinity's gaze averted by flame's decree, eternal allies in the secret's forge, union sealed not in shame but sovereignty. Mornings evolved ritual. Coffee brewed on decks misted by fog, mugs steaming as sun-crested ridges, the canyon's green a verdant counter to city's steel. Julian sketched plans on tablets, investments diversified, charities rechanneled in our image, his focus a mirror to mine, easel set on easel capturing cliff's jagged grace. Afternoons wandered markets teeming citrus and spice, hands brushing in crowds anonymous, the casual graze electric with undercurrents refined, our narrative rewritten sans footnotes of blood. Evenings wind on patios, stars wheeling overhead, conversations delving psyches unbarred. Fears of isolation's echo, joys of autonomy's bloom, the secret a cornerstone bolstering rather than burdening. Weeks blurred to months, the coast weaving us into its warp, hikes tracing trails fern-choked, swims in coves turquoise and teeming, bodies buoyant in salt's embrace. Friends accreted gradual, locals drawn to our quiet intensity, dinners shared under string lights where laughter masked depths, step-siblings tail a palatable veil over truths incinerated. Yet in solitude stolen dawns on bluffs, his palm at low back guiding ascents, the pact pulsed vital, smiles exchanged the cipher of confederates, love's defiance a flame banked eternal. Weed fled not from fire but toward its forge, California the anvil shaping our alloy unbreakable, the most grievous secret now the sinew of forever. One twilight, waves crashing symphonic below, we stood deck-railed, his arm encircling waist, chin at shoulder, the horizon a line infinite as our choice. Worth it, he whispered, breath warm against ear, the words encompassing pyres and proofs, taboos transcended. I turned palm to chest feeling that dual rhythm, smile blooming shared. Accomplices absolute, morality's heist crowned success. In that vista's vast, we'd claim dominion. Love paramount, secrets sovereign, the blood's whisper a lullaby lulling to horizons ever west, union eternal in the crime's perfect hush.